It's another edition of Pens Down. This is where we sit with journalists, practicing or otherwise, and get to understand what they go through or they went through while in active practice. A lot of things happen in the line of duty, but as a principle in journalism, the news reporters and presenters are supposed to be observers, not participants. So more often than not, we don't get to hear some of the things that affect them in the line of duty. That is why Pens Down is here. We have dedicated this platform to turning the CCTV camera on ourselves so that we let you know what we go through and some of the issues we grapple with in the line of duty. My guest today is one of Ghana's most influential media executives who has over 20 years experience, during which he's established himself as a sought-after specialist in concept development and multimedia production. His media journey took off in the 90s with a brief stint at Ghana Television, GTV, before traveling to the United Kingdom. While in the UK, he served as director of publishing for Eagle Media House, where he spent a considerable part of his career. He wrote and edited various books, including War on Poverty, I Have the Power, and The Concept of Love in Relationships. When he returned to Ghana, he worked with GTV and TV3 in various capacities before joining ETV Ghana in 2010 as programs manager. Under his watch, he rolled out a bouquet of programs to up the station's ante. Some of the programs are Exposure, E-Business Journal, Breakfast TV, Awake, 100 Degrees, News Extra, Week in Focus, The Late Night Celebrity Show, and Girl Talk. He became the station's general manager 9 months later and served in that capacity till October 2012, when he took leave of the establishment. In 2014, he returned as managing consultant. Currently, he sits as the executive director of the Institute for Media Practice in Ghana, a research-oriented entity that focuses on training media personnel, surveying, monitoring, and evaluating media in West Africa. He is the founder and president of Solaris Films, a firm that specializes in producing documentaries and biographies. He was the show director for the Miss Ghana pageant in 2012 and serves as resident judge for the Foresight TV Music Video Awards. He is also a member of the Ghana Fashion Awards Board and a judge on Miss Tourism Ghana. My guest today is Mr. John Osei Tutu Agyeman, popularly known as JOT Agyeman. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Stephen. It's a pleasure being here.
Right. How did you end up in journalism in the first place?
Well, by accident, I should say. My training is in the performing arts.
Okay.
Specifically in what we call media arts, so that's film, television, and radio. Okay. But linked to the performing arts. So that's where my training is. However, I think in the early 90s, BBC at that time were looking to replace some of their older presenters, people like Charlie Sam, Tommy Adam Forson, Esiche Dakwa, all of those people. And I happened to chance on that advertisement. I had just returned from the UK briefly. Okay. And I decided that while I'm in Ghana, I would do something with my time. So I went for the interviews at BBC. They were looking for extra presenters for the morning show at that time, which was hosted at that time by El Ankra and the legendary Akushika Akwe. And so I was picked, myself with Gifty Auntie, Ikado is now at the Parliament House. Yeah. And so we went through a series of voice training and other sorts of training under Roberta Gardner, and Wallace Bampo, the late Wallace Bampo, and ended up as a reporter on Ghana Television's breakfast show, as well as an alternative host of the program. So that's how I started my journey on journalism. And then since then, I enjoyed it and I stayed.
So for over 20 years, you've done various things in the media, from hosting programs to managing, supervising teams, rolling out programs and all that. It puts you in a certain stead with a repertoire of experience you have gathered. One thing that has plagued the media today is the level of attrition. So many trained, qualified professionals are leaving in droves. Some of them are moving into corporate communications. Others are going into entirely different things unconnected to communications. What do you think is accounting for this kind of trend in this country?
Stephen, that's a very interesting question you ask, because at the time that we went into the media and those before us, it was out of passion. It was not because we wanted to make extra money. Yes, the money was okay, but that wasn't the reason for going into the media space. And I recall people like Tommy Anamforson, Charlie Sam, and the rest. We listened to them every single day on our radios, and we were enthralled by their expression of the language, the way they did things, and that drew many of us into the media space. However, the dynamics have completely changed over the past maybe 20 years or 50 years. The dynamics have changed because the world has become smaller. That's one thing we have to understand. Globalization has allowed us to expand our horizon. The internet has come to stay. It has opened up certain scope that we never had before when we started in the media. And so many journalists, young people, people in the media space, practitioners, now have a certain kind of understanding of what you can do, what else you can do as a journalist, also as a media practitioner. And so quite a number of them, who, especially those who went abroad on scholarships to study, whether it's Leeds or Cardiff, under the Chevening scholarship, came back and didn't want to report, for example, because their minds had been opened to a certain media scape, which allowed them to now hone their craft in other places. So quite a number of them left into the corporate world. Others who had served their time and paid their dues as journalists, people like my good friends, Emma Morrison, Gifty, forgotten her name, but they moved into corporate. And still a lot of them have moved into corporate because corporate, apart from the money, also gives you an understanding of communication in a different dimension that you don't get if you are an ordinary journalist. I'll also say that the money, we've heard that every time before, the money is not good. And people have to eat. People have families they have to take care of. And so obviously they will gravitate towards where there are bigger bucks. But perhaps the most damning of all of this, the reason, is because the media space today has become politicized. And the space is now owned by a certain group of people who in the past never were in that space. I don't bear politicians any grudge for owning media houses, but what it does is that if, for example, I work with you and my lineage is towards a certain political, then I'm not going to want to be with you because I would not want to toe the same line that you toe. So that's also accounted for why you see a lot of people moving in and out of the space.
Okay, there's a quick follow-up question on your submission. There is increasing political ownership of the media. Do we have a reason to be concerned or be worried as a growing democracy?
I don't know if we should be concerned. I think what it is that has created for the kind of mediocrity that we see in the media space. Because, like I said in my earlier submission, that media houses that are politicized or owned by politicians tend to want to toe the line of the party that the politician belongs to, or tend to want to do the bidding of the politician. And therefore, they throw their journalism to the dogs and follow that trend. That is where the danger lies. The danger is not in the fact that the media house is owned by a politician. I don't see anything wrong with the politician owning a media house. The Constitution allowed for any Ghanaian with a sound mind to be able to do so. And if the politician has the money to buy the license to do so and to employ many Ghanaians, then that's fine with. However, it is how they use the platforms that they own that is what we should be worried about, because that platform, which is what we call the people's platform, because once you're on air, the spectrum is owned by the people of Ghana. It's not owned by the politician.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful what you use that for, and that's where we have a challenge.
Does journalism pay?
It does. In many ways, it does. It really does in many ways. But if you look at the monetary value of journalism, if you look at how much you're going to be paid, then you would think journalism doesn't pay. But myself, and as well as many people that I know who were passionate about journalism and who didn't go in because of the money, I think that, let me talk for myself.
Okay.
Being in the journalism space or being in the media space, it opened me up to many things that I didn't know at first. It broadened my network, for example. It allowed me to be on platforms that I wouldn't have been on. And for me, that you cannot put value to some of these things that you get in contact with. So if you're a journalist and you're thinking only about how much money you're going to get to your pocket, you may miss the real reason for being a journalist. The money is good, but that's not the main reason why you're being a journalist. So you must think about, okay, I'm a journalist. How do I enlarge in my coast, for example? Who are the people who listen to me, for example? Where else can I send my message to? Who are the people in my network? If I'm in Ghana, how do I relate to other journalists across the globe? All of these things are things that add value to the craft. And I think that is very, 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 a classic example. For example, I have a lot of journalists and friends by virtue of being in a certain space, Global Media Alliance, who were the originator of the CNN African Journalist Award, Mr. Edward Boateng, was my boss. So by virtue of being there, I understood a certain type of, what do you call it? I came across a number of people who I probably would not have come across. And today they are all in the network that we keep as journalists. And it has improved a lot of the things I do in my private practice, as well as the things I did in the past.
Was there any time, either as a practicing journalist yourself or as a media executive, that you were approached with anything material or monetary to compromise the facts and details of any journalistic work you were undertaking?
Oh, many times. I mean, many, many, many times you get people trying to shortcut the process, or people wanting to buy, in quotes, your loyalty. I'll give you one quick story. In the elections of 2012, for example, I think it was, somebody, a celebrity, walked into my office, and he had an envelope in his hand, and he said, oh, the big man says we should bring this to you. And so I looked at him and I said, who is the big man? I have only one big man, that is my boss with watching, and he hadn't sent anybody to me. So I said, who's the big man? He said, oh, this one, it's from the presidency. And I said, well, unfortunately, send it back and tell them that JOT Agyeman cannot be bought. And that created a certain sort of, bad blood between myself and this celebrity who brought the envelope. And lo and behold, I don't know if you remember, there was a list of journalists who had taken money at that time from some of these politicians that came around after the elections. Yeah. And I said to myself, oh, wow, okay. So my name would have been on that list as well. And it just shows that you've got to be very careful as a journalist, because the danger is that you would think that, oh, I don't have money and this money will do me good. But your reputation is so key to your practicing as a journalist that if you are not careful for a few thousand cedis, you will damage that reputation. So yes, that has happened in the past. And unfortunately, I'm not one of those people who can be honest.
So are you still in active journalism practice?
I'm not in active journalism practice, but what I do is that I still train a number of journalists. I still go back from time to time if I'm required to go to certain media houses and train their people. I still consult for a number of media houses when it comes to content development. I still meet up with young content writers who want to develop content for their stations. And that's where I get most of the joy, meeting the young ones and talking through concepts and thinking critically about what needs to be done and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Beyond the training, are you thinking of academia, communication relevant academia?
Oof. I've been asked that question many, many, many times. I think for me personally, academia is too routine for me. Okay. And I'm not one of those people who believes in routine. I like to be on the go. Currently, one of the things that I'm working on is development of certain documentaries for a number of TV stations outside Ghana. Unfortunately, due to non-disclosure agreements, I cannot mention which TV stations these are. But those are some of the things that I'm doing right now. And so I have a team of young people that I go around with. And every day I prefer to teach them that way and show them practically how some of these are done. And when you come to my office sometimes and you see them around trying to develop concepts, it works beautifully. But let me just say that what I also do is that I've extended my tentacles a bit now into the fashion industry. And so there are some fashion colleges that I go to maybe twice a week, and we discuss concepts in the fashion industry. We discuss critical thinking, branding, things like that, and how the fashion industry in Ghana can improve. So I've kind of expanded my horizon a little bit from the media.
You hosted a number of programs. You were co-host of Start on TV3. You hosted Hot Issues. Obviously, you might have stepped on toes, some of them, quote unquote, big toes.
Oh my God.
Were there times that your job and what you did brought your life under danger?
Danger, I'll say no. I haven't had, I'm not one of those who can go around and say that my life has been in danger. No. I think that as a journalist, one of the things we learn is not to cross a certain line where, especially when you know that the facts that you provide are not correct. And I think that that's where most people end up in danger. But if your facts are correct, and you speak to the facts and you relate to whoever your guest is in such a manner that you do not disrespect them, I think that you are more than safe to continue with your work. a lot of the programs are posted, whether it's 100 degrees, whether it's talking points. Was the last time I was on TV 3 years ago. I hosted that program for 3 years. And not once. I mean, obviously, you have your guests disagree with you sometimes, but you've got to do your research well enough to let the guests know that you know exactly what you're talking about. I don't believe in, unfortunately, in the processes of some journalists, in, for example, investigative journalists and how they get the information. I don't think that is journalism at all. I believe in doing the research and sticking to the research as it is. And if there are any fallouts from that research, then it's up to you to go back and correct those mistakes and apologize to your guests for the mistakes you made. That is the mark of a good journalist. The mark of a good journalist is not to get up and decide that I'm going to coax somebody into doing something wrong, and that can be problematic.
Which assignments or assignments stand out for you as the most challenging?
I stayed away from political assignments in my time. With GBC, I wanted to do what I did, I should say. I concentrate on more human interest stories. I preferred to be with people. I didn't want to, political stories are very monotonous. If you understood the culture of GBC at that time, and maybe today, today is even worse for me, because today what happens is that the Jubilee House Communications Bureau, they go out and they do their stories the way they want and send it to GBC, and GBC will have to air those stories. So it's made the GBC political reporters, it's rendered them a little bit redundant in terms of what they can do. Unlike GBC, most of the other stations have, which are private, so they can decide what to do. But I have decided all the time to stay away from politics because I didn't want to be tagged to a particular party or tagged to a particular person. So I chose rather to do things like documentaries and move away from that, human interest stories. And but if there's anyone that sticks in my mind, it will be 2007, I believe it is, or 2008, African Union in Ghana.
That's 2007.
2007, when Ghana, the 50th anniversary of Ghana's independence. And that for me was very, very interesting. That I had to, GBC assigned me to that. And so meeting people across the continent and speaking to heads of state across the continent, speaking to President Fore himself. Those were some of the highlights of my time at GBC. With TV3, I did very little reporting. I was more presenting on television and doing programs for TV3. So in terms of reporting, I think that the African Union stands out. And also Glen Eagles, 2005, I think it is,
okay.
In Scotland, where I covered that on behalf of Ghana government.
Okay. You have worked with a number of young talents, some of them who have come fresh from school to either intern or start work as entry-level graduates. What can you say the curricula in the classroom and the reality on the field? Is there a yawning gap, or there is a close relationship?
No, there's a huge gap. There's a huge gap. The field is completely different from what you learn in the classroom, and especially when you're in the media. If you go to places like NAFTI or School of Performing Arts, where they are taught media arts, production, and so on and so forth. The challenge most of these schools have is that people in academia, especially in the School of Performing Arts and maybe NAFTI, they've been in academia all their lives.
Yeah.
So it becomes very difficult for them to tie industry to academia. But what you need to do is to have a blend of both industry players and academics in order for the student to understand what is really on the ground. They do need the academics, don't get me wrong, but they also need industry.
Yeah.
So for most great schools across the globe, whether it's in New York or the New York Art School, or it's a London School of Arts, whatever it is, you find that industry players come in as well. And then you also have academics come in, or you have academics who are also industry players. Mm. And therefore, students have a certain kind of understanding of how it works. At my time when I was with Global Media Alliance as managing director, general manager of ETV Ghana, for example, we brought in quite a number of national service personnel at the time, and we had to retrain all of them. Even today, as we speak, there are people that we had to retrain, and it's very difficult to. I always say that the best journalist is the one who's learned on the job, not the one who's been to the classroom. Because being in the classroom, you can have a first class, you can do whatever. When you get into the field, it's a completely different thing. And so I'm proud of some of the young people that worked under me and trained under me. Ghana's, we have Thomas Bittelma, for example, Nadi, who is now the BBC representative here in Ghana, worked with me for many, many years. You have Eddie Micah Jr., DWTV, worked with me, and under me, I put him on TV the first time. So there are others as well that today, when I look back and I see, and I'm real proud of what they've done.
Should journalists be licensed?
Ooh. It depends on what you mean by a license. First and foremost, the Ghana Journalists Association is just an association.
Yes.
Nobody is forced to join GJA, and they don't have the power to do much for journalists. I think what GJA should be looking at doing is to become more of what you have with the Ghana Medical Association or something like that, where they will have to license. And until GJA gets to that point, where everybody who is a journalist will have to go through GJA, you have to be licensed by GJA. If even if you haven't paid your dues, they can publish that you haven't. They can sanction you. Until we get to that point, it'll be difficult for journalists to be licensed, especially because the Constitution gives an almost free range, to media practice in this country, and that can be dangerous, because then you have a lot of charlatans and a lot of journalists out there, or people who call themselves journalists out there, doing whatever it is that they want to, and nothing can be done. I mean, obviously you have the National Media Commission, but they don't even have the teeth to fight. So that in itself is another challenge. Yeah. It looks to me that the media space in Ghana is one of those spaces that has been left deliberately by politicians to be a free-for-all, so they can get their people into those spaces to do their bidding. And that's where we have a problem. But now, in terms of licensing, that will be very, very difficult.
If we are to go back into time, 30 years, would you still choose journalism?
No. Not at all. 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 Not because I haven't enjoyed myself as a journalist, not because I haven't gained a certain reputation, not because, but I just think that it's the way we do it in this country. It's such a noble profession, but over the last, let me say, since 1992, it's deteriorated so much, and it becomes difficult to really say much good about the profession these days. And anytime I meet some of the older journalists and we reminiscing on the days we had, whether it was at GBC or wherever, they all tend to tell you that the new crop of journalists have lost it. And I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough one for me to go back and be a journalist. I don't know. Maybe not. I always wanted to wear a uniform when I was growing up. So whether it was the Navy or the military or something like that, maybe I'll just go into that space again if the opportunity came.
You have done more than 20 years, various aspects of communication. How many more years are you traveling before you bow out of the terrain?
You never bow out. That's the thing. You never bow out. I would hate to sit at home and cross my legs and watch TV and see the rot on TV or listen to the radio. I mean, I hardly ever listen to the radio these days because for me it's just noise. If I listen to the radio, it will have to be maybe Atlantis, where I can listen to some good music, or City. City is one of the radio stations that I listen to. I like the way Ben Adable moderates his programs. But I don't know. You never retire as a journalist or as a media practitioner. What you do is you need to think about what legacy you can leave behind, and the people that you can look back and say that, oh, okay, these people trained under me, and those are the people that make us proud. So anytime I am called, I go in and I try and help as much as I can. So I've taken to a lot of writing these days. So I've been writing a lot of plays, trying to publish some of the works that I do. I've been writing papers. And so retirement for me is really a no-go.
Social media came along at a point. It redefined the frontiers of journalism to a very large extent. From where you sit, was a social media, let me use is because it's still here, is social media an opportunity to journalists or a challenge to them?
Social media is both. Social media is a good thing. If you understand where the world is going and if you understand how small the world has become, any good journalist, local journalist will think, globally, and probably act locally, but think globally. And that's what social media allows you to do. And it is important that whether you're in Ghana, you're in Nigeria, in this part of the world, you are able to, in a way, use social media to develop your skill and your craft. And that is where we have challenges with journalism, because people just think that, oh, I'm on Facebook or I'm on Instagram, and that's all. But that is not it. Social media, the use of social media itself is a skill. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
It's a skill you have to learn. You've got to learn the nitty-gritties of social media in order to hone your craft. So it's not just about posting stuff on social media. So the opportunities are there for our people to understand how social media expands their horizon, to understand how social media can open them up. I know people on social media who have become huge writers by just writing blogs, for example, But the disadvantage of it is that we have people who just want to use social media to enhance themselves as an individual, not to enhance the craft. Yeah. And therefore, for them, social media is that one thing that they can use to make money or to insult people or to do all of those things. And that, for me, is the challenge. But it has huge, huge opportunities for us this side of the globe.
Is press freedom, or rather freedom of the media, is it a reality in Ghana?
Well, I think it is. It's just that in the past few years, you hear quite a lot of things, and most of it started with the repeal of the libel law, when media people thought that gave them the space and the audacity to begin to misbehave. I'm against the libel law, yes, but I'm also against media people who misbehave in the space that they've been given. The Constitution never gives us the authority to look down on people and to trample upon the rights of others. The fact of the matter is, if you're a media person, you have to understand that your freedom ends where somebody else's begins. So you cannot just say that because I'm in the media space, I have to do anything I like. I believe that press freedom in Ghana is really a reality. It's just that media people need to learn how to behave. And I think that when we learn how to behave, a lot of things will happen. I've heard about many times you hear that the police are brutal, they are this and that. But I always ask the question, are we trying to say that the police will just get up one day and enter somebody's house and say you're a media man, and so because you're a media man, I'm arresting you? That will not happen. You know, a classic case is the case of Caleb Kudo. I think that's his name.
Caleb Kuda.
Kuda, right? From City, young journalist. I listened to him sometime on City. But the fact of the matter is, you went to a space that you were not allowed or authorized to go to. You understand where these things happen?
Yes.
And so the moment you begin to step on nerves, as much as I condemn what happened to him, it's always a ripple effect. Something happens, and then something will also take place. And so we have to be circumspect about how we gain our information and how we do things and what we say and how we say it. You know, it's only in Ghana that we hear that somebody goes on social media and can insult the president, for example, and get away with it, you know, or insult the vice president and get away with it. It's only in Ghana that we go on TV and we call people liars. It's unbelievable. You don't find that. I've lived in the UK for many years. You don't find that in the journalism space, you know, doing all sorts of things. And I don't know how we pick these things up. And it's also because there are a lot of people in the media space who are not trained journalists or who have not understood what the concept of journalism is. And that's where the problem is.
So what's the way out of this mess, quote unquote?
The way out is twofold. One, empower the National Media Commission more. I think that is very important. Empower the Media Commission to be able to bring journalists to book. That's very important. When you're able to do that, then, for example, if there's a challenge with the police, then the police will only just have to report a journalist to the Media Commission. But as of now, if you report the journalists to the Media Commission, they really don't have much to do. They can only caution the journalists, and that's it. That's the first thing. Then the Ghana Journalists Association must begin to change its MO and become more of a unionized or whatever it is organization, to be able to have a bargaining power, to be able to have authority over journalists. And there should be a mandate where now every journalist or everybody who wants to work in journalism, you've got to register with the the Ghana Journalists Association. And there, if you do anything untoward, once they investigate, then they can penalize you either by taking your license or by fining you or something like that. If we do not put these two together, I'm afraid we will continue to be in this deep water that we are, or we've been in the past.
Should we soon expect a book from you chronicling your experiences as far as your journey in communication or media generally is concerned?
Well, the truth is, I started. I have a book called "Getting to the Top of Your Game." I actually pretty much completed it, but I decided against, I don't know what it was, that I wouldn't publish it. So it's a book that I use to train journalists, but it's not a public book. Maybe now that you've said it, Stephen, I should look at it again and maybe bring it out. It tells my story about GBC, tells what happened in TV3, it looks at ETV, It looks at the space, the media space in Ghana today, where we came from and where we should be going. It looks at all of these things, and maybe you never know. If God gives us the strength and the will, we will definitely publish.
Let me pull the brakes here. Thanks a lot for your time. It's been priceless. A lot
Thank
of
you very much.
Perspective and submissions to help us understand some of the things that are going on. But just a quick one. Are you still a politician?
That was the one question I was hoping you wouldn't ask me. I've never wanted to be a politician. I live in Ayasa Central, and I see what goes on in Ayasa Central, and I see the people, and they come up to me, maybe because I'm a known face in the community, and they come up to me and they tell me their problems, and then I look around and I see the fast degrading society that we live in. And Ayasa Central is really a microcosm of the country. You know, Ayasa Central, from Alajo to Kokobembe to Pig Farm, Kutubabi, and right in the heart of Accra. And you see I mean, for example, 3 days ago, the flooding in some of these places, and here, and we have I think I'm being honest. Not that I want to contest him or anything like that, but I think that Honorable Henry Korte, for example, I think he's done his very best. He's done what he can do as an MP. I think he's come up with some initiatives, but you can't leave these things in the hands of one person all the time. I mean, you need new ideas, fresh ideas, and so on and so forth. So I threw my hat in at that time, 2020, I think it was. And at a certain point, I looked at what was going on, and decided that maybe we should give them another opportunity. So 2024, I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't know what is going to happen. I don't know whether I'll be in again or I'll be watching, or I don't know.
Thank you very much, sir, for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Stephen. It's been a pleasure.
And I'm grateful that you were able to join us. This has been PENSDOWN. Here we talk journalism journeys. All that you don't get to hear when the news is read, you have them in black and white on this platform. Strictly journalists telling you their own stories, the things they go through. We'll be back next time with another edition. Thanks for joining us. Bye.